The Memorial Scrolls Trust, London, England, sent an email. Congratulations, your work is an inspiration. From Temple Shalom of West Essex, Cedar Grove, New Jersey, home of one of our Devorah Kralova Taurus, we welcome as a guest this evening for our night of remembrance, Naomi Pates, wife of Rabbi Pates, and co-author of the monograph, Thus We Remember, the story of Devorah Kralova. From Temple Bethel of Geneva, New York, home of one of our 4 Devorah Kralova Taurus, we welcome guests this evening for our night of remembrance, Cantor Richard Rosenfield and his wife, Lise Rosenfield. Naomi Pates, Cantor, and Lise Rosenfield, would you please stand to be recognized? And we have received a most stirring letter from a Jewish woman, Eva Noskava, who lives in Devorah Kralova. I'd like to read a few excerpts from Eva's letter, which speaks eloquently to our story. My name, dear Mr. Edelstein and members of Temple EMANUEL in Newton, Massachusetts. I got this by email. My name is Eva, and I'm the last living Jew in Devorah Kralova. How did it happen that I survived the events of World War II? I immigrated from Czechoslovakia to England with my parents. My father served in the Czechoslovak army in Great Britain as a tankist, and my mother worked for the International Red Cross. My father returned to Czechoslovakia with the army in May 1945. My mother and I came back in November on a train operated by the Belgian Red Cross. We discovered that all the other members of our family had been murdered in concentration camps. Now I'm the last living member of those generations. I was hugely surprised to learn that you have a scroll from our temple, spelled T-E-M-P-E-L, that another scroll has survived the war. I didn't know about it until Rabbi Norman Pates sent me an email letting me know and asking me to write to you. I cannot begin to tell you how pleased I am that our community continues in the synagogues in America. I think I can say it is a miracle. Our members are still alive through your scroll, and I hope that this will last forever. Thank God there are still places who remember the Jews who were lost in the Shoah, who keep their hearts and souls alive in memory. God bless all of you for what you are doing. Please know that I will be with all of you in my heart. I wish you most sincere congratulations on this important event. What you do is not only for yourselves, but for both the history of our people and its future. Most sincerely, Eva Noskova.
uncanny how our weekly Torah portion, Parshat HaShavua, always, exactly, exquisitely frames this moment. Some background. There were lots of Israelites who lived and who died, who had hard lives and tragic deaths, but we do not know their names. And because we don't know their names, we cannot mourn them properly. We just literally don't have a name to mourn. That is the case, for example, with 430 years of Israelites who were slaves in Egypt. They were born to be slaves. They lived as slaves. They died as slaves. But they died in anonymity and they died in obscurity. And what can we say but there were 430 years of slaves? There is no candle with a name that we can put to anything. But there is a contrast to that. There is a story of another case of Israelites who had a hard life and a tragic death. But they have a name. And because we know their names, we can remember them. And because we know their names, we can mourn them. And because we know their names, we can be moved by their legacy. And that would be the case of Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron who died. Nadav and Avihu died 2 weeks ago in Parshat Shmini. They were consumed by a holy fire that went forth from God. Now, why did they die? No one knows. There are lots of explanations, and all of them share only one thing in common. They're all unsatisfying. The only thing we can say about Nadav and Avihu is that they lived, that they died too young, they left behind heartbroken father, mother, heartbroken brothers, and we know their names. And because we know their names, Nadav and Avihu, unlike 430 years of slaves who have no name, we think about them again in this week's portion, Acharimot, after the death. Because we know their names, we can come back to them. Because we know their names, we can come back to their story. Because we know their names, their story is never gone from us. But the interesting thing about Acharei Mot, after the death, is it is almost always a double portion. And the companion piece is Kedoshim, holiness. We don't know why they died. Answer, unknown. But we know after their death, holiness. After the tragedy of life snuffed out, the imperative to live. Rabbi Norman Pates, our guest speaker, has rescued 122 lives that were snuffed out from anonymity, and 122 lives that were snuffed out from obscurity. Because of Norman Pates' work, we know their names, we know when they died, we know where they died. We know how old they were when they died. And because of that, we've got candles burning. And because of that, we have names enshrined in a wall. Acharei Mot, Kedoshim. After death, holiness. After tragedy, the imperative to live. It is a privilege to call upon Rabbi Norman Pates.
Rabbi, Chazan, survivors, friends, it's a privilege for me to speak here at Temple Emmanuel. There's a very special bond between my congregation and yours, because we both have Torah scrolls from Dvor Kralova, a small town in northeastern Bohemia, whose Jewish community no longer exists. But I have a much earlier connection with your congregation. In the late 1950s, Temple Emmanuel's educational director Dr. Martin Goldstein, of blessed memory, invited me to join the congregation's religious school faculty. I was about to be graduated from the Hebrew Teachers College. Now, if your Torah scroll could speak, this is what I think it would say to you. It would say, I am a survivor, and I need you to be my witnesses to the truth, so that the truth will be told and civilization can be saved. If you are not willing to be my witnesses, then big lies, like the ones that are being circulated on the internet, on Holocaust denial sites, will permanently displace truth. You and your families will be endangered, and civilization will be doomed, because everything I stand for will be lost. Now, on what basis do I make such a dark statement? How did this scroll get to carry so much weight, to be so central to our survival? I believe that this scroll, like the one in my congregation and the others rescued from the Nazis, conveys not only our understanding of God's Word and our covenant with the Holy One, but also the burden of the darkest period in our history. Your scroll is one of the 1,564 scrolls that were saved from the destruction that overtook our people during the terrible years of the Second World War. In nearly all of the countries that the Nazis occupied, they looted our people's synagogues, they melted and destroyed or scattered the ritual objects, and condemned our people to be murdered. But in the historic lands of Bohemia and Moravia, which today constitute the Czech Republic, they adopted another procedure. They gathered the ritual objects together and they sent them to Prague, the capital city, where they intended to create a museum designed for purposes of derision and scorn, to make fun of the quaint and odd ritual objects of a people whom they described prematurely, but fairly accurately, as the exterminated ethnographical species. In this way, the little Jewish museum in Prague that had been founded in 1906, which had about 2,000 items in its collection pre-war, was forcibly expanded so that by the time Prague was liberated, it had 100,000 items in its collection, stacked floor to ceiling in 8 synagogues and 50 warehouses throughout the city, with very few owners alive to reclaim their possessions or to reestablish the synagogues that had existed in interwar democratic Czechoslovakia. The Torah scrolls that the Nazis collected were never put on display in the museum. They were stored in a disused synagogue in the Myślus suburb of Prague until 1962, when the communist government, looking for Western cash, sold the scrolls to an English art collector for $30,000. 1,564 scrolls for $30,000. Of course, $30,000 was a lot more money in those days than it is today. In that year, 1962, a new Cadillac cost $5,000. The scrolls were brought to London, where a Memorial Scrolls Trust was established, and a sofer was hired to repair the scrolls that could be repaired. The trust then researched the history of each of the scrolls and began distributing them in trust to institutions such as my synagogue and yours to return the scrolls to living Jewish communities